Hey, welcome to Bikes, Boats, and Bivouacs. We've made it to the Alexander Graham Bell Heritage Center.
Yep.
After four-wheeling through the mud. But we're here. Let's check it out.
I was gonna say, never take a dirt road.
Macadam roads only.
But we were ready because we could have fit 2 people in each kayak.
Yeah.
That four-wheel drive helped.
Marie's advice.
So Alexander Graham Bell spent time up here in Nova Scotia. They have a cultural heritage center. There we go, let's check it out.
Thank you.
I got you.
Oh, you did? Okay, thank you. Are we allowed to film in here?
Yes.
Okay. Alexander Graham Bell had a beautiful estate up here in Nova Scotia, Canada, and that is why the Historical Heritage Center is located here right on the Cabot Trail. And the first thing you see when you come in the door is a timeline. And what was fascinating to me going through this timeline is the fact that he was truly an inventor. Everybody thinks of just the telephone with Alexander Graham Bell, but he spent quite a bit of time developing and researching other areas in flight, in ocean, and nautical stuff, in addition to the medical field. Bell was born in 1847 and died in 1922. And early in his career, he was considered a pioneer in the field of deaf education and was actually an instructor in that field. Today, they would be called a speech pathologist. Now, because of the success of the telephone, that really freed him from having to earn a living, and he was able to concentrate on his experimentation and analysis and allowed his imagination and curiosity to develop scientific experiments. The main areas that he concentrated his experiments on were sound transmission, medicine, aeronautics, marine engineering, and space frame construction. So quite talented as an innovator and an inspirer of others. Did not know he held the marine speed record for a hydrofoil. You figure the tetrafoil then goes to hydrofoil when you start playing with it in water.
So one of the things that his father did was work on a system called physical speech. And this is an example of one of the symbols. And if you take different parts of the symbol, it shows what you do with your mouth, tongue, and vocal cords when you make certain sounds. So this, for example, is the sound, like mom. And he said that once you learn physical speech, you would be able to learn any language really quickly.
Collaboration with Casey Baldwin, Douglas McCurdy, Lieutenant Thomas Selfridge, and Glenn Curtis This collaboration really led to the success of the Silver Dart in February of 1909. And this was through the Aerial Experiment Association, which was founded in 1907. Years later, hydrofoil craft in development, the HD4, set the world speed record in 1919. His wife Mabel was very active in the community, and she played a large part in establishing a public library and the Home and School Association, as well as a club for young women. Bell's estate employed quite a few people, not just in maintaining the property, but also in the construction and development of items for his experiments. The home is still in private hands and is not open to the public, but it played a major role in the area. Now, in the Heritage Center, there are artifacts, and some of them are reproductions. The HD4 reconstruction incorporated some of the original parts, and then some of the archival materials are originals and others are valued copies. So when you go through this center, you really learn a lot more about Alexander Graham Bell than what you may have learned in elementary school or middle school. Alexander Graham Bell was from Scotland, and this particular area, Nova Scotia, I believe, really reminded him of Scotland. He was born in the Edinburgh area. So I think that's why this appealed to him, and he built his summer estate up here. This property is managed by Parks Canada, and I have to say, every one of the properties that we have visited from Parks Canada has been top-notch, inexpensive, and camera-friendly. So we really appreciate the way the properties are maintained and the value that individuals can find in going through them and learning about people that spent time in Canada. Bell had 4 children. His 2 sons died in infancy and his 2 daughters lived. And they had trouble breathing, so that is when he started medical experiments on something similar to the iron lung. His curiosity caused him to really go in many different directions with his experiments, and it is ironic that in his office there were no telephones. He thought the telephones could be a great distraction, and he didn't want them in his office. So here, the man who developed that telephone thought that perhaps it was too much of a distraction to have the telephone directly in the office and wanted it outside of his office. To talk about Alexander Graham Bell. Of course, he was born in Scotland, became a naturalized U.S. citizen, started the Bell Telephone Company,
Right.
invented the telephone,
That's what he's well known for.
and many other things.
Yes.
So the Heritage Center was created to honor what Alexander Graham Bell meant to Canada. So, what do you think about that Heritage Center?
The landscape was beautiful. I wasn't able to go in because we had Phoebe, but so I took a little tour outside. And we also noticed, just another tidbit about Canada, they still have the phone booths around, payphones. So it was neat to see.
Yeah. So that Heritage Center is beautifully landscaped. It's right across the street from the water, so you can see the harbor from the center. And Alexander Graham Bell's property, it's still in private hands, so you can't tour it. The best you can do is there's a boat, I think it's called the Amoeba, I'm not sure, that you can get on, and you can float by the property to see it, but you can't tour the property since it's owned by private citizens. It's not owned by Parks Canada. But the Heritage Center is managed by Parks Canada, and they've done a great job. And inside the center, they really highlight his lifespan from when he was born to when he perished, and everything that's happened in between. And one of the interesting things that I saw in there is that he was the tutor for Helen Keller. So he helped her in trying to understand language and get through that process, because he was a professor or a teacher of the deaf. And that led to a lot of his early work and what his assignments were coming over to the U.S. So he had 4 children, and the 2 daughters survived, but the 2 sons did not. And that actually is what sparked his interest in durable medical equipment research. He was on the forefront, really, of trying to design and build an IR lung that would breathe for somebody. So that was some of his early work. And then he also, with 3 other people, was really heavily involved in experimentations regarding aeronautics, flight, and then that led to more work on hydrofoils and boats. And the organization that he belonged to, or that his wife had formed for him to do these experiments, ended up with a vehicle called the Dart that was a flight. And then his hydrofoil set the speed record on the water. So he really, all things transportation, he was really interested in that kind of work, and that stuff is displayed. The original pieces are in there, and then the reproductions and restoration work is also in there. And a lot of his documents, the originals are in there, or the copies that you can see are in there. One of the most interesting things that I found in going through that center was that in his office, he did not have a telephone. He thought they were a major distraction and didn't want that telephone in his office to distract him. So here's a man who made most of his money off the telephone business, and he just did not want that telephone in his office. It was only to be used for communication away from your thinking. I don't know what he would think about cell phones today.
Yeah.
But that was interesting. The other thing I found interesting is his original shares of stock in Bell Telephone when the company was formed. He actually gave to his wife as his wedding gift to her. He only kept a few shares and gave it all to her. So that was a courageous thing for him to do. But they really did spend a lifetime enjoying Canada in the summer. And that property, hopefully one day when the family is done with it, it'll be turned over to Parks Canada so that people can see the property. It's got to be fascinating. So maybe down the road, towards the end of our lifetime, we can get back there and check it out if it is open to the public to see. So consider if you're going to do the Cabot Trail, this is at the very beginning. If you're going up the Atlantic side and down the Bay side, consider stopping at the Alexander Graham Bell Heritage Center on your journey. It is well worth it, really done well, and we learned an awful lot stopping there. So if this video helped you, consider subscribing to the channel. It's free, it helps us out a lot. Also ring that bell and you'll be notified every time I put up a new video, and give the video a thumbs up. That helps it be seen by a wider audience. But more important than all that,
Go have some fun out there.
thanks for watching.